Welcome to Growing Startups, where we talk to growth leaders and marketing professionals about how to drive sustainable growth from the ground up. I'm your host, Evelyn Cools, and I lead marketing for tech startups. I'm excited to share these candid conversations about marketing, culture, collaboration, and everything else that makes startups grow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of the Growing Startups podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. Season 1 was amazing. I am so glad that I started this podcast because I've just gotten to connect with so many amazing startup marketers and people on growth teams at fast-growing companies. So it's just been such an amazing thing for me. I have loved every conversation that I've had so far, and I'm just really excited to introduce you to Season 2, what we're going to be talking about. And I have my matcha in hand, which is very important. This has been my caffeine of choice lately. And I figured that we would just start this first episode back with a little bit about me. I've gone through some pretty big personal and career updates and thought that might be a nice way to kick things off for the new season. And just a couple of things on, how the podcast is changing moving forward. I have recently started building out my team a little bit, so very excited about that. And then I figured we could also touch on a couple of things that I'm focusing on in 2026. Marketing is just changing so much, I feel like every single day. So wanted to touch a little bit on things that I find very important moving forward in 2026. And maybe a couple of tools that I've been using. So very short version of my current tech stack and things that I can't live without. So let's get into it. First thing I wanted to talk about is a pretty big career update. I have been at startups for a very long time, pretty much my whole career. Started in the music industry as a head of audio for So Far Sounds, which was more of a scale-up at the time. Transitioned into being part of very early stage teams a couple of years later. The cool thing is that my audio background still translates into a lot of what I do today. The audio visual content piece is just super important in marketing these days. So I've been very lucky that a lot of what I've done in the past also translates into what I'm doing now. And I've spent the last 5 years as the first full-time hire at a health tech startup, and then founding marketer multiple times for health and HR tech B2B companies. So what that means is I'm usually the first person coming in, setting up the marketing from scratch, taking it from 0 to 1. And that's really been my bread and butter. It's what I am excited to do more of. And with a couple of other big life changes, which I will touch on in a second here, I decided that I was going to transition to fractional work. So the way that looks now is I work with multiple startups directly with founders at the same time in whatever capacity they feel like they need most. So whether that's coming in as a full fractional founding marketer where we work on strategy and execution together, pretty much exactly the role that I was filling at my previous companies, but just on a fractional basis. The great thing about fractional work, and this is becoming a lot more of a popular term, is that early stage companies can really get that senior level experienced marketer, a real marketing leader, without the cost of a full-time employee. Especially, I think, in those super early stages, it's really nice to have someone come in like this because you just end up learning so much faster. There's not a lot of hand-holding versus having a junior employee. So it's just been something that I've seen a lot of demand for, and I think just really fits well into the early stage startup way of working. So that's been very exciting to be able to kind of drop in the way that I'm very used to, but with multiple startups at the same time. And kind of similar to that, but really, dependent on the where the startup is, how much they have to invest in marketing, how much the founder wants to do marketing, or if they have someone on their team to do a lot of the execution. I also can come in as more of a growth advisor to really help with the strategic side of things. So that's a little bit about, my offering and what I'm doing, how I'm positioning myself. So it's been a couple of crazy months. I'm very excited to already be working with some really cool, exciting companies. So just very grateful for the initial traction and honestly for taking the leap. I think this is something that I've been thinking about for a very long time and just excited that it's finally happening. All right. Kind of, similar vein here is the more personal updates that I wanted to share, which first one being around the same time that I went fractional. My husband and I actually decided to move to Atlanta from Los Angeles. So we've been living in a lot of different places over the last couple years, New York, Arizona, LA, and now we decided that Atlanta was going to be our next home base. So very much still in the process of getting to know the city, getting involved in the tech startup landscape here, which is booming and very exciting, and just really, trying to build a home here. And a big part of that, the reason for that move, and this is the last personal update I will share, is that I became a mom 8 months ago. So that was obviously a very big transition. It's been, the most amazing and challenging time, as I'm sure any parent will say and probably feel the same way. But just very grateful that I'm in this position. It's such a beautiful thing to be able to raise a little human, and obviously, paired with the career transitions, I'm really building a career that I feel like suits this phase of life and also how I want to be living my life. So just very excited about the whole setup that I'm creating, and fractional work has been treating me very well. So if any founders listening are curious about what it looks like to hire someone fractionally, whether it's me or another fractional leader, always happy to chat about that. And if there's any marketers listening who are also curious about this, then, let me know. I'm always happy to chat about this in my LinkedIn DMs. All right, taking a little break here, my first sip of matcha. And while I do that, I'm pretty excited to share that I hired a video editor to help me with this podcast. I've been editing everything myself, all the long form videos, the clips, just everything that goes into creating a podcast I have been doing myself. And I finally took the leap to actually hire out some folks to help me, including Alex, who is our amazing video editor. So while I take this sip of matcha, he's going to play something that I'm also pretty excited about, which is my first ever ad break. So let's just get rolling into that right here.
This podcast is brought to you by Evelyn Cools Marketing. If you're an early stage B2B tech founder who wants marketing to actually work, you're in the right place. As a fractional head of marketing and growth advisor, I help early stage B2B startups take marketing from 0 to 1 by building the foundations, testing different channels, and scaling what works. I'm currently offering a free strategy call where I do an audit of what you've tried with marketing so far and share practical advice that I believe will make the biggest impact on your growth engine. Visit evelyncools.com to book your free strategy call today. Now back to the episode.
All right, now that we are back from that, I figured we could pivot into the things that I'm going to be focusing on in 2026 when it comes to B2B startup marketing. I recently put out a post about, these are the 5 areas that I would invest in if I was a B2B SaaS founder. And I truly stand behind all of these. This post got a lot of traction, and I think it's because it really resonated with a lot of marketers as well as founders. And so I just wanted to do a quick run through on what that said and why I think it's so important. So the first thing that I would double down on is content that builds trust. So I think going into 2026, the thing that we should all be focusing on most with marketing is building trust. And especially in the startup world, this was already important. Your name is not something that potential clients have seen before most of the time. You really want to be super clear about what you do, who you do it for, but then also, show that social proof, show who you are as a human and why they should trust you. So the content that I think is going to perform really well and that I'm going to be focusing on is podcasts, whether it is you launching your own podcast as a founder or just trying to get on more podcasts so people can really hear how you talk, what the product is, what the vision behind it is. I think it's just such an amazing way to show people what you're all about and build that personal connection in a way that you would when you're on a one-to-one call with someone, but obviously it's a lot more scalable. In that same vein, I think webinars are still going strong. A lot of people have said that webinars and virtual events are a little bit less of a thing now, but I've still seen really good results from those. Case studies, whether it's, really well-written case studies on your site or video testimonials, I think those work really well. Newsletters, if you want to, be more in the written word arena, I think can also work really well. So especially in the era of so much AI-generated content, which I'm sure we're also going to be moving away from at some point. But as it stands now, I think there's still a lot of that out there. So any way that you can stand out from that and show up as your authentic self online is going to be something to focus on. Really similar to this is thought leadership from founders as well as employees. I think the founder thing, we've kind of, it's a proven concept. Founders should be posting on LinkedIn. It's kind of a non-negotiable. When I start working with people, I think you should just be doing this. But there is also more of a trend now, and I think a real untapped opportunity in employee-generated content. So this can be your customer success team that's talking about how they support customers, how they're helping build the product. Your product team can obviously be talking about all the behind the scenes. I think you have all these experts in your company, and if they can just talk to what they do, you're going to have so many more eyeballs on this. And I'm actually very excited because one of the guests this season is going to be talking all about employee-generated content, especially for the B2B space. Moving on to the third thing, which is in-person relationship building. And here I'm not talking about the big conferences, though obviously you can still show up at those in interesting ways, and always happy to talk more about how I approach that because events have been a big part of my marketing strategy for many years. But here I'm really talking about intentional gatherings with partners, prospects, customers, really just figuring out how you can get those people in the same room, talking about stuff other than your product. Again, building trust, building relationships in very authentic ways. And as soon as you start putting those people together, they're organically going to start talking about what you do. And this is, again, one of the topics we have coming up. One of my great friends and former coworkers is going to be talking all about this. So very excited for that episode. The fourth thing that I would double down on is storytelling, balanced with SEO and AI search optimization. Obviously, those latter two are still very important, but I think that having great copy is more valuable than ever, especially in the age of AI, obviously. So get yourself a great copywriter. I think, product marketers, content marketers who are still using their own unique voice and obviously using AI tools as well to become more efficient and better at their job, but not outsourcing these foundational aspects of your marketing, I feel like is really important at this time especially. And then the last point is a cohesive brand experience, which is one of my soapbox topics that I have been talking about for many, many years. But I think especially for startups, this is, for one, tough to do. We are constantly changing, our strategies, the way that we support customers, our products. There's a lot going on at all times. But if there is a way you can make your customer journey even a little bit more cohesive, both visually, just making sure that we're using all the same, visual language, and then also the words that we use. So it should not be a jarring transition from someone landing on your website, seeing everything that's there, booking a demo, seeing the sales deck or the product in a sales conversation, and then moving along to customer success. Those things should all feel very seamless. And again, easier said than done, but I do think it is super important. So those were my 5 areas that I would really tell people to focus on, especially founders when they are thinking about their overarching marketing strategy for this year. Let me know if you have any thoughts. Again, always happy to chat in the comments, wherever you're watching, listening, or just hit me up on LinkedIn. I love talking about this stuff. All right, let's transition over to my next topic, which is my tech stack. And this is a very short version of it, but I figured we could just narrow it down to 5 tools that I cannot live without as a startup marketer. So the first one is HubSpot. I have tried many CRMs, and they all have their things, their value, their quirks, but I have found HubSpot is just the best one, especially for early stage teams. I think it's just so user friendly, but at the same time, you can still make it customized enough for what you're trying to do at the very beginning. I love it because I can integrate almost every single tool that I use outside of our CRM. So whether it's, a webinar series that we're doing or, LinkedIn, literally whatever channel I want to connect into there, I can get that information straight into my contacts and their profiles. So when I'm setting up marketing foundations for companies right now, this is one of the things that I always make sure to do first, because we're going to be testing a lot of things. And, I think it's very tempting to skip over these foundational pieces, which, I talk about messaging a lot and making sure that you have like your core messaging down, your ICP, but those foundations also translate over into the tech stack that you're using. And specifically the CRM and the place of truth that's going to tell you all the experiments we're running, like what's actually working, how our customers flowing through the journey between marketing, sales, CS, product. If we can have that all in one place, that is my absolute dream scenario. So I really love HubSpot. Obviously, it has its limitations, but it is absolutely a core part of my tech stack. Then next, I absolutely love Notion for project management. I've also been really impressed by their AI tool. I'm now on the free version of their pro plan for a couple months, and I feel like I have been converted into basically I'm going to become a paying customer because it's just so great. So if you have not tried Notion AI, absolutely recommend just testing it out. They have like a couple of free messages that you can send. It can literally build you a Kanban board from scratch in like 2 minutes, and it is wild. Next up, we have tried and true ChatGPT. This has been my LLM of choice for a very long time, although I am now getting a lot of reasons from people mentioning it and things that I've been reading about potentially transitioning to Claude, and I am very excited to try that. I do feel like it's a little bit, there's an opportunity cost, and I feel like I need to just set aside some time to actually do it properly, because ChatGPT knows me for, better or for worse. It knows a lot of things that I'm doing, how I think, how I write. It has a lot of documents, a lot of knowledge that I feel like is just going to take some time to transfer over to a new system. But I have heard so many great things about Claude that I'm excited to give it a go. Fourth tool that I've been loving is Whisperflow, which just allows you to speak straight into every tool that you might normally type into. So whether that's Gmail, your LLM of choice, literally anywhere that you might put text into, it can take it in and spit it out in a way that is a lot better formatting than just using like the dictation on your phone. It, knows what you're putting it into. So an email is already gonna look the right way. It removes ums and anything that you don't want to include. So definitely recommend checking out that tool. And there's also a free version. So that's actually what I'm on, and I have not needed to upgrade yet, which is obviously great because I have so many subscriptions. And then the last tool that I wanted to mention is Zapier. I just started building my own AI agents. I took a course and we looked at N8N, Zapier, and Lindy. And Zapier is just the most user-friendly, I feel. So that is where I will be starting, but excited to hopefully transition to some of those other tools when I feel a bit more comfortable and experienced in building AI agents. And then finally, a special mention to Riverside, because that's what I'm recording this podcast on. I would not be able to record this podcast with remote guests without a tool like Riverside that makes sure that the quality is great and uploaded separately. So there's a lot of stuff I can talk about when it comes to audio visual quality and why Riverside is just the best thing to use for podcasts. But always happy to continue that conversation someplace else. Okay, those were my main topics, but I did want to give a little bit of a sneak peek before we close off this first episode of season 2 with topics that we are going to discuss. We have so many great guests. I am just incredibly excited to share all these conversations. I've already learned so much from everyone that I've talked to, and I think you're just going to love all the content. It is absolute gold. So a couple of the topics that I'm especially excited about this season are hiring your go-to-market team, AI agents and when to use them for marketing, finding your founder voice on LinkedIn, employee-generated content, as I already mentioned, and how you can use that as a growth engine, and how to make B2B marketing not boring, and how we might be able to use some of the customer, like B2C marketing, to get inspired and see if we can transform our B2B marketing space a little bit. So those are some topics that I'm especially stoked about, but we obviously have so much more coming your way. There's going to be talk about leadership, about events, literally every single topic that I've been wanting to know more about. I basically found a guest to join me on this podcast. So lots to be looking forward to. Thank you so much for being here. I would love to hear, if you listen to season 1, what episodes you really enjoyed. If there is any topic that you're thinking about that you would love to learn more about, definitely let me know. I'm still always looking for new people to bring on the podcast and just ways to make this as valuable as possible for everyone that's listening. So excited to bring you along this second season. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for listening to Growing Startups. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to give us a rating so more people can find the show. So happy you're here, and see you in the next one.